So we have Brian Belt with us on behalf of Dylan Foley, who was unable to make it. He's going to be presenting Dylan's slides. This is an introduction to the Ramsay Smart Dollar program that we are looking to roll out here at Sargent as part of a pilot project program. And this is to garner some interest and to also give you some insight as to what the Smart Dollar program can offer and some savings strategies. So if anyone in the audience has a question, feel free to jump in now. And if there isn't anything, Brian, take it away.
All right, and we will have some time here at the end for some Q&A. So if there are some questions that come up, write those down and feel free to ask those there at the end when we have the time. So, well, I want to welcome everyone to our webinar today, which is basically on saving for life. And this is presented by Smart Dollar. And if you're not familiar with Smart Dollar, this is an online digital platform that's going to give you the tools and resources you need to achieve your money goals, regardless of what those are. Everybody has something they want to do with their money. And so this is a program that'll help you achieve, those things in the most efficient way possible. So before we jump in and really start talking about Smart Dollar, I did want to share a little bit about my story and how this has helped me. Because you may think I'm just somebody here doing a job, and that's true too, but this has really impacted my life, and so I've been there, I've done that, and this has really taken me from a place of where I was living paycheck to paycheck with no savings. I couldn't borrow money because I'd ruined my credit, till now. And so I want to walk just through that short journey, with you guys, so you kind of know how this has impacted me and how this can potentially impact you. And so for the majority of my life, I had really bad money habits. And the best example I can share is I'm a United States Army vet, and I was deployed to Afghanistan after September 11th. And as a 20-year-old man, I'm overseas. And if you guys know veterans or a veteran, you know that when you're deployed, you get all this extra money. You get hazard duty pay, combat pay, your regular pay, and it's all tax-free. And so I came back from deployment with just over $20,000 in an account. And I do want to clarify, I didn't save that money. I just didn't have anywhere to spend it, being out in the middle of the desert. If there was a place for me to spend that, that would have been as good as spent. But either way, I came back to the States with just over $20,000 and blew through that in about 3 months. And I couldn't tell you what I spent it on. I don't think I have anything from when I did that, and I can't remember anything that I purchased, but I know that I blew through that really quickly. And that's pretty much how I handled my money. And I always told myself that if I just made this much money, or if I got this bonus or this raise, that I would be able to achieve, my goals. I'd be able to save more. I would be able to give more. I'd be able to, pay for a down payment on a car or things like that. But every single time that I got more money, I just spent more. And so that was kind of the behavior and the relationship that I had with money. So it was really, really bad. And I probably lived that way up until I'd say about 34, 35. This is around the time that I met my wife. And we didn't want to start our marriage off without a plan of how to get out of debt, because we both had debt. And so we wanted to start our marriage off with at least a plan on how we were going to go about, getting out of debt. And that's how we came across the things that we're going to talk about today. And so it took us about 2 years to pay off just over $40,000 in debt. And so we had each started probably 6 months before we actually got married. So a year and a half in, we were debt free. And at this point, we want to start our family. And along the way, learned that it's going to take a miracle for us to be able to start our family, naturally, which was really frustrating for us to hear. And so we start looking at other options. We go through, the doctors discuss fertility treatments, and that doesn't work. And, we get approved to be foster parents. And that's how we ultimately were able to start a family, was becoming foster parents, and then meeting the two boys you see in the picture. Cash is 7, he's there in the middle, and Keegan is 6 on the right. We fell in love with them, and we wrapped up that adoption in May of last year. And if you're wondering kind of how that connects, well, if you have been through or know anybody that's been through either the fertility treatments or an adoption process, those aren't cheap things. They're very costly. And it's to share that I went from a place again of being living paycheck to paycheck, having no savings, not being able to borrow money, to where I cash flowed the fertility treatments. We cash flowed the adoption. I didn't have to worry about how it was paid for, even though there was a lot of other things going on emotionally. I didn't have to worry about the financial piece because of the things I learned in this program. So it's not to brag, it's just to say, regardless of where you are, there's something for everyone in this program. There's something that can help you achieve whatever those goals are. Paying for a wedding, buying a house, buying a car, retiring early, whatever it is, this program is going to help you get there. So I wanted to share that with you guys so you know kind of where I've been and where I'm at now. And it's only because of the things that we're going to talk about today. So starting off, I want to go through the 7 baby steps with you guys just real quick. We'll do a deeper dive into these as we go through this, but this is essentially your roadmap on how to achieve those goals, how to win with money. And it starts with these. These are steps that have worked for millions of people over the course of about 25 years. If you guys are familiar with Dave Ramsey, you've heard them before. But these are the steps that we use to really get control over money. So I want to walk through these 7 steps with you real quick, and then get into a little bit of a deeper dive into how these apply to savings, regardless of what it's going towards. So let's walk through these. And so here you can see them, all of them at a glance. And so number 1 is, getting $1,000 saved up for your starter emergency fund. Number 2 is getting all your non-mortgage debt paid off. 3 is your big emergency fund. This is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Once you have those completed, then you can start investing. And you want to invest at least 15% of your income into your retirement at this point. Save for your kids' college after you're investing for your future first. You've got to invest for your future before your kids, because, no matter how much you enjoy working, how much you love your job, at some point you're going to have to retire. So you have to plan for your future before theirs, because let's face it, they may not go to college. Number 6, get that house paid off early. And then finally, number 7 is where we all aspire to be. This is being completely debt-free, no house payments, and almost the entirety of your check is going to whatever you want it to go to. And so you can build your wealth quickly, and you can be generous at this stage, because there's nothing taking money from your check except what you have to live off of, your groceries, your gas, things like that. But at this point, you have no debt. So 70% or more of your check most likely is able to do whatever you want to do with it. So those are the 7 steps. And I want to go into a little bit more detail in each of those steps. But before you start working on these, the most important thing you guys have to have in place before you start saving, before you do anything financially, the most important thing you guys have to have in place is a budget. Nothing is going to happen if you guys aren't budgeting. So many people get to the end of the month and they look at their accounts and they're like, where did all my money go? And they have no idea how much they spent on eating out, or groceries, or gas, or clothes, or coffee. None of those things are bad, but nobody tracks their expenses. And so sometimes things get out of control. So the most important thing you can do, if you hear nothing else today, is get on a budget, because this is where that change starts to happen. This is where the money habits start to take a turn for the better, is by getting on a budget. And so the way you do that is we have an app called EveryDollar. This is part of this benefit. It's not extra. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. You sign up for EveryDollar, and then what this allows you to do is connect it to your bank account, and then import the transactions you make with your debit card, so that, or just your account in general. But as you're making those payments, you can drag and drop those into the categories you've planned. And so it gives you visibility. And it's going to be kind of a key thing here that we talk about today, is just having visibility into your finances. But this will give you visibility on what did you plan for the month, what did you spend, and then what do you have left over. So if you get 2 weeks into the month, how much gas money you have left. You know how much money for groceries you have left based on the budget you put together. And so I mentioned it's not bad to buy coffee or clothes or the things that you love to do, but you got to make sure that you've got the money for that. You got to make sure the things that need to be paid for are being paid for. And so maybe those things go down a little bit, but you can still do those things. You just have to make sure the money's planned for and you know where every single dollar is going. So this is, again, the most important step when it comes to hitting your goals for your money. And so let's talk about getting started in the baby steps. And so we talked about budgeting a minute ago. The EveryDollar app will walk you through that process. So if you've got questions around that, again, I can answer those at the end. But it's a very user-friendly app. But let's go through these steps so we can get to talking about savings and retirement and all the fun stuff. So first thing you want to do is, if you're in a position like me, to where you have bad money habits, or maybe you've just never taken the time to really focus on your finances, well, you want to start off with number one, and this is getting $1,000 into a starter emergency fund. And so typically what we see in America today is that almost 40% of people can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money of some kind. And so what this first step is designed to do is to cover you in those small emergencies. So if you're thinking it's not very big, you're absolutely right. It's not, but it's designed to only cover the small emergencies. Additionally, when it does come to changing your money behaviors, your habits, we want you to have some quick wins, a victory, if you will. And so saving $1,000 is a lot more obtainable than to say, hey, save 3 to 6 months at first, because that's going to see, if you haven't saved that money before, that's going to seem like a big goal. And so we want you to have that quick win, to feel good about the progress you're making, and feel good about the step being, you can check that step off your list of the baby steps. So that's one reason. And then lastly is, we don't want you to spend a ton of time on number two, which is paying off all your non-mortgage debt. If you've got this big emergency fund, most of the time people just don't attack their debt with the same intensity that they do, knowing there's only $1,000 keeping them from going further into debt. So that's kind of that second reason we set that amount low. But once you have that saved up, the second thing you're going to want to do is get to baby step number two, and get all your non-mortgage debt paid off. This is, student loans, car payments, credit cards, anything you owe money on, you want to get that paid off. And another tool that you have access to through this program is our debt snowball tool. And this will help you organize your debts smallest to largest, so that you can see, again, when we're talking about visibility, see the progress you're making along the way, getting that debt paid off. And what you'll learn is that once you get the smallest debt paid off first, you take the money you were paying onto that and roll it over to the second debt. And so that payment that you were making on the second debt now is a little bit bigger, and it gets paid off quicker. And then once that's paid off, you do the exact same thing and roll it over to number three, and you'll see that those payments you're making get progressively bigger and those debts get paid off faster. Now, the other thing that this doesn't show, and this is my favorite benefit of this tool, is this is going to show you when your debt-free date is based on what you put in here. So you put in your debts, you put in the payments you're making, it's going to tell you when your debt-free date is. And so it's really, I loved seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that as long as I stay the course, I'm going to be debt-free by this date. And then as I made extra payments, from a tax return, from a bonus onto my debt, that date got sooner and sooner. And so it became a game for me to see how soon I could get out of debt, because I saw that debt-free date was getting sooner based off of the additional payments I was making, based off of sacrifices I was making, things like that. So how soon you get out of debt is completely up to each individual. But this will show you the date just based on whatever you put into this, to the tool. So it's a really fun tool to use. That's part of this program as well. It's free. But once you get all that non-mortgage debt paid off, you want to get your debt free, and so celebrate that, because that's a big deal. It's something that debt has become a social norm, and it's not bad if you have debt. Things in life happen. that force us to make split-second decisions that do impact our financial picture. And so it's not wrong to have debt, but there's a better way to manage your money. There's a better way to achieve your goals. And so again, celebrate that. Go have a nice meal, take a trip, but just do something. Don't go back into debt, but go and celebrate that, because you just put a lot of work into achieving that. So it's a big deal. Now, after you have that, you're going to want to get your big emergency fund in place. And this is really where you start to see us talking about savings. We're talking about savings for life today. And so the big emergency fund, is for big emergencies. So if your hot water heater goes out, you have your car breaks down and it's unfixable, you're going to be able to cover those things with the 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Now, it may not get you the car of your dreams, but it'll get you something to get you around. It's going to cover home repairs, big car repairs, anything with the exception of the catastrophic emergency. And this is, something that, you can decide to continue to build onto if you want to. It's about, building that into your budget. So if you get to 6 months of expenses and you want to stop, you can stop there. Or you can continue to put into that if you want to. Not in place of retirement, but just to make sure that, you've got, some extra money there. But just make sure you get that in the budget. So if you're trying to determine between 3 to 6 months, our recommendation is that if you're single with no dependents, you'll be fine with 3 months. But if you have dependents of any kind, children, spouse, partner, taking care of elderly parents, you want to be on that 6 month side, because there are other people depending on you for your income. So that's kind of a good rule of thumb for how to decide between those two. Now, if you are single with no dependents, you can still save 6 months. But at that point, that's kind of your call. So, but yeah, that's baby step number 3. Knock that out. You can see the little piggy bank there. There's another tool for this. This will walk you through, having that visibility to know, where am I at with my fully funded emergency fund, with my big emergency fund. This will give you that visibility that you need, and give you some tips and tricks on how to make some extra money if you feel like it's taking a little bit longer than you wanted to. So some good tips and tricks on there. One thing I want to call out with these 3 baby steps is these are meant to be done in order and individually. So we don't want you to try and do number 3 before you do number 2. Or we don't want you trying to work on number 1 and 2 at the same time, or 2 and 3 at the same time. We're talking about changing behavior here, and it really starts with following a plan and discipline. And so that's why you say, do these one at a time and do them in order. Now, if you've already got $1,000 in the bank, awesome. Start at number 2. Or if you don't have any debt, but you don't have your 3 to 6 months, we'll start at number 3. Start the plan with where you are. This is not just for people in debt. I mentioned this has something for everybody, but this is really where getting that savings in place comes into play. So let's jump into number 4 here. Or I'm sorry, there's one other step that typically doesn't always get mentioned because it doesn't apply to everybody, and it's saving for a house. Because if you're single, that may not be something on your agenda, but it's called baby step 3B. And that is saving for a house. So you need to have your emergency fund in place before you're saving for a house. And we recommend saving for about 10 to 20% of that down payment when you are purchasing a house. Additionally, you want to make sure that the mortgage isn't going to be more than 25% of your take-home pay. Our recommendation is it shouldn't be more than 25%. If you keep it to 25% or less, you should have enough money to do everything else that needs to be done. But again, save 10 to 20% for that down payment. 10% might be easier, but 20% is going to save you money in the long run. So you have to talk with your spouse, your partner, or somebody that you trust about what should that number be, for you. Additionally, you'll keep seeing these tools here. And these are all based on visibility. I mentioned that visibility was going to be a thing. We're trying to keep this picture in front of you so you can continue to stay motivated, continue to work through these processes, these steps here. And so another great tool And then two, there is a mortgage calculator on our Smart Dollar site. So that's something else you guys will have access to get an idea of, what your mortgage payment's going to be. So a lot of great tools, a lot of great resources. So this is number 3B. I mentioned it's, not applicable to everyone because some of you guys may already have a house. And so that's why that doesn't always get brought up, but it was worth, obviously it's part of the presentation. I wanted to make sure we covered that. So let's talk about retirement. This is something that I mentioned earlier. Every one of us is going to have to do, regardless of how much you like working. Everyone's going to get to a point where they just can't do it any longer. And so how do you plan for retirement? Where do you start? That's what we want to talk about right now, and to give you guys a good picture of what the best way to do that is. And so compound interest is the most effective way to build your retirement. And so a lot of people are, they want to invest in stocks or whatever is new and exciting. But as you're going to see as we walk through this, compound interest is really what drives your retirement fund. And so we're going to just go through an example here of two different, made up scenarios. But these are true equations and things like that. And so in this scenario, Jack starts investing at 21. And he stops at 30. So he puts in money for 9 years basically. And his total contribution is $21,600. So he contributed, almost $22,000 over the course of 9 years. Now, the other person that we mentioned, he doesn't start investing until he's 30, but he contributes until he's 67 years old. So he contributes a lot longer. Who do you guys think is going to have more money? And you may already know the answer and maybe not, but his Blake's total contribution was $91,200, but we haven't looked at compound interest yet. And so it may look like right now, that Blake would have more, but because I forgot the guy's name anyway, the first person started investing earlier, that compound interest worked to his benefit over a longer course of time, as opposed to the second person, because he was contributing for longer. But again, it's that compound interest. That's the thing that's really going to help you guys in the long run. So all that to say is that if you're younger, start investing if you are at a point where you can. We want you to work through those first 3 steps, but don't put off investing because you don't feel like it's time for you yet, because that compound interest really makes the difference of $1 million in this scenario. And the total contribution was less, but it's just that getting that in earlier and letting it sit there. Now, the other way that this works is because most likely the second person, Blake, was contributing a smaller amount of money. And so it took him 37, I'm not sure how many, it took him a lot longer 37 years to save $91,200. And so that was growing, but it was only growing at whatever he had in. So maybe 10 years in, he only had $10,000. And so interest are growing off of that. Whereas the first person's got interest growing on $21,600. That's kind of where that meets the road, is why that's a lot higher, is because he had a set amount of money that was building interest during that same amount of time, while the other person was slowly building that up. And so why is that important? Because when you are in debt, when you don't have an emergency fund in place, and emergencies happen, potentially you borrow from your retirement, and that takes away from that compound interest. Or you can't put as much money into retirement because you have other bills, you've got car payments, you have credit cards. And so we want to show you this, obviously, to show you how important it is to invest early, but two, how, having debt and how not having a savings, impacts your ability to invest as much as possible. Because when when those are line items in your budget, it takes away from your ability to invest for your retirement. So that's why we wanted to show you guys that example, to really understand, I need to have as much money to put in retirement so I can get to where I want to be. We don't want you to have a good enough retirement. We want you to have your dream retirement. So if that's traveling with the family or around the world, if that's retiring early, we want you guys to dream big when it comes to your retirement goals. It's not just like, well, this will get me by. I mean, that's fine. But I think everybody on the call would love to have their dream retirement. And so what's standing in your way of having that? And a lot of times it is debt, and it's not having a savings account. It's things that happen in life that take away from your ability to invest. And so just wanted to spend a little bit of time there. But it's extremely important that once you hit maybe step number 4, to invest at least 15% of your income into your retirement. If you guys have a 401k or whatever your company's retirement plan is, make sure you take advantage of that. And anything over and above, get with a financial advisor and find out what's the best way to use the rest of this money, so that you're meeting at least 15%. If you've got more than 15% to put in, outstanding. That's just the minimum that we're saying that you should be investing at this point. Now, you see the little tool here. This is the retirement tool. This is going to allow you to basically see how much you should be investing each month in order to reach your retirement goal. And so if you want to have, $2 million for retirement or $5 million, this will tell you what you need to invest each month in order to get there. So it's a great tool to have. And, we say that retirement's not an age, it's a number. So you figure out, what do you need to live off of? What do you want to live off? What is your dream retirement cost? And this will help you know what do you need to invest each month to get there. So great little tool. If you guys have questions about, your 401k or whatever your company retirement plan is, reach out to the HR team for more information on how to get started. But again, we want to make sure that you follow those steps, because I mentioned that a lot of times when life happens and people don't have an emergency fund in place, they borrow from their retirement. And there's 2 reasons we don't want you to do that. 1, that takes away from that compound interest. But 2, if you don't pay that back, at least from a 401k standpoint, that gets taxed at an extremely high rate. And so you lose a lot of money at that stage. So that's why it's important to make sure that you have yourself protected, so that when life happens, you don't have to borrow from your 401k. You don't have to go into debt all over again. So that's why we say walk through those steps first before you start investing. And if you are investing right now and you haven't completed those, just put a pause on it. Don't take any money out of your retirement. Just put a pause on it, and then go and knock those steps out, and then come back and start investing again. A lot of times what we find is most people aren't able to make that 15% because of debt. And so if you go back and knock that out, a lot of times you can put more into your retirement at that point, because you don't have to make the car payments. You don't have to make the student loan payments. You don't have to make the medical payments or anything else that you owe money on. So it allows you to invest more into your retirement. So again, if you have questions on your retirement plan, get with your HR team to get some more information. Saving for college. This is another big savings goal that people have questions on. And I mentioned earlier that it's important to invest for your future before your kids. I want to reiterate that now, because again, your child, if you have them, may not go to college. They may get a job right out of high school, or maybe they join the military and get that paid for that way. Maybe they get a scholarship, and those are all great. There's nothing wrong with any of those. But if you have been saving for your kids' college, but not your retirement, then you potentially lost all those years, 10 years, 15 years, potentially, saving for your kids' college, and then you're losing that compound interest, which impacts your retirement. So it's important, again, to make sure you guys save for your future before your kids. It's not bad to save for your kids' future, but make sure you're planning for yours first. But yeah, saving, for your kids' college is great. If you have questions around that, get with a financial advisor and figure out what is the best way to save for your kids' college. What is the best, way to grow that? What are some of the tools you guys have access to? So just, get with somebody to do that. Or, a lot of times banks have plans as well that allow you to save for that as well. So you can make that part of your plan if you want to, but make sure you're planning for your future first before you start, saving for kids' college. So these are all the ones that are related to savings specifically. So obviously saving for your 3 to 6 month emergency fund, that's going to protect you in a lot of different scenarios. Saving for retirement, and that never stops. You should always be saving, I guess, for retirement once you get to that point, and then saving for your kids' college. Those are the three things that you're going to find yourself saving money for. Well, you may think like, hey, Brian, there's other things that come up too, and you're absolutely right. And I'm going to cover some of those here in a second, but just another recap of the 7 baby steps so you guys can see those. We left off at number 5. Number 6 is pretty straightforward. Pay off your home early. Don't hang on to the home for a tax break, because that's money you could be investing, and the money you could be investing is going to grow your retirement more than whatever tax break you're getting from holding on to that home loan. There's also something to be said for peace of mind that comes from having a paid off home. So knock that out once you got to that point. Once you're investing, once you're saving for your kids' college, start making extra payments on the home. And then once that home's paid off, number 7 is, being in a spot to just build your wealth quickly and be generous. So when should you pause the baby steps? That's a question that we get a lot. And so it depends on what happens. Life happens sometimes. So anytime that you have got to cover a big purchase, a car repair, a baby, a wedding, you're going to have to replace the roof, or you want to start saving for those. Now, the Christmas in the new to you car isn't necessarily something you need to pause the baby steps for, but when it comes to like a wedding and kids, those are big life events. And so if those expenses are coming up, well, pause your steps and set the money aside for those things temporarily, so that you're not going into debt for those. We don't want you to go further into debt. And so it doesn't make any sense to continue working through the baby steps if you have to borrow money to pay for that wedding, or if you have to, borrow money to cover the medical expenses for having the baby. You want to make sure that you plan for those things. There's a lot of expenses that come for each one. There's catering and photography and DJs and things for the wedding. And for babies, you've got the cribs, the clothing, the diet. There's all kinds of expenses that come with those. So if you know that's coming up, pause on the baby steps with wherever you're at. If that's paying off debt, just pause and start saving up for that big event you have coming up, and make sure that's in place. Now, other large expenses, Christmas happens every year. Start planning for it, putting, $50 a month, $100 a month aside, starting in January. By the time you get to Christmas, you'll have a nice little fund to celebrate Christmas with, but you don't have to go into debt in order to cover that. I mentioned earlier, having debt's, not bad, but there's a better way. Wouldn't you rather have that money in place to go spend, in cash rather than going into debt? Same thing with a car. If you're gonna, want to get a car, we'll start putting money aside for that car. Same thing for maybe a roof repair or a big home repair. Just start saving money, for those things, so that when it's time to do them, you have the money in place. But those examples right there aren't the ones you necessarily stop your emergency fund for, but the life-changing events are. If you're early on in your steps and you've got a car repair and you don't have enough to cover that, well, don't worry about the baby steps for right now. Do whatever it takes to get that money to pay for that car repair, so you can get to and from work, because if you can't get to and from work, you can't make money. So, look for the things that are keeping you from progressing forward. Those are, a good way to know whether or not you should be pausing in those baby steps. So, but those are just, having a sinking fund is what we call it, is the best way to save for these types of purchases. The Christmas presents, the new to you car, the roof, It's for things you know you're going to have to spend money on. So it's a separate account. It's not part of the emergency fund. It's not part of your standard checking account. This is something separate that you put money into for the things you know you're going to have to buy at some point. It's called a sinking fund. So that's the presentation on savings. I want to say thank you guys here real quick for being on this. I do have we'll have some time to answer questions if you guys have questions about anything. But again, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to be on this and learn more about savings and what we recommend when it comes to budgeting and savings and paying off debt, because these are the things that helped me change my life. And I didn't start until I was 35. And I'm 43 now. It didn't take me 8 years to get all the way here, but a couple of years to get out of debt, another year to get savings in place. So it's a lot of change can happen in a short amount of time when you buy into these things and you commit to them. It'll change your life if you guys let it. So thanks again. And then if you guys haven't signed up, there's a QR code. Grab your phone, scan that QR code. It'll take you directly to your company's sign-in page to create that account. It's completely free for you guys to use because Sargent felt strongly enough that financial wellness was important to invest in your guys' financial wellness. And one of the best ways you guys can say thank you is just to sign up and use it. The information on this is personal, it's confidential, so nobody's going to see your individual picture. That's just between you and your financial your partner, your spouse if you've got one, but nobody sees it except for you, so you've got nothing to lose. Scan that QR code, sign up, and dig in and find out how that can help you achieve your money goals. So that's it for the presentation. What questions do you guys have?
Thank you, Brian. Does anyone in the audience have questions for Brian or about the program? No? All right. Well, we are recording this, and Brian, I'm going to share this with our Sargent family, so we'll have this out there, and hopefully we'll gain some interest on participants for the pilot program. And then if any questions come up after you think about what you viewed, feel free to shoot me an email, and if I can't answer it, I'll reach out to Dylan or Brian and we'll go from there. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks again, everyone. And if you got questions, reach out to Amy, and she doesn't know it, she'll reach out to us and we'll get that figured out. But I'll leave you guys with a quote. It says, it's Albert Einstein says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. And so if you feel like you've been trying to dig out of whatever situation you're in and just can't get there, do something different. That's what I did. And I promise you won't be sorry. So thanks again and have a great week.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.